I would say the general motivations for the work are my own lived experiences and then my familial histories and just a retelling of those narratives, right? A history of migration, which is so, especially in this moment, is so relatable because of the kind of social political climate that we're in. Um, and so, because of the climate that we're in, I think it's even more important to talk about these things and um, really bring to the light that idea of migration is not something new or foreign. It's quite normal, and human populations have been doing this for centuries, for millennia, however long the human race has existed, right? And so I think, in particular, focusing on narratives of Black and Brown communities is important because it's often these communities that are depicted in negative ways through media, in particular, and in all forms of media, right? Like film, the news, etc. And we often don't hear our stories, and especially not from our perspectives. So that's why I think it's important to make this work, and that's kind of what I'm uh, doing through the work, is just inserting my narrative as another perspective, as an alternative to um, well-known or dominant narratives or histories. So the installation piece, Rhythm and Pleasure, that's in the show, it took several years to bring together. It started off as a video, and then it multiplied. It got longer, but it also began to incorporate multiple channels. And then the last component of it was bringing in the sculptural element. So for the first time, I was able to, at the time that I was producing this work, I had the time and the space to really expand. And I went back to previous work that I had done, and thinking about materials and what materials could I bring into this that sort of reflect that same trajectory, but also like bring about this conversation about the migration in a non-direct or non-literal way, that also gets you to think about bodies in a different way as well. So the clothes in particular and the palettes also, um, for me, they have these corporeal properties that really, um, for me, are very present in them. And then also there's also sort of like reference or allude to circulation and globalization and how communities and groups of people like migrate across the world, and how that migration or that movement mirrors the circulation of commodities around the world. Because essentially these people, these communities that are migrating, they're essentially moving to offer up their bodies and their labor, um, in order to survive and find work and to find a better living. And so that circulation for me was really important to talk about. It's not just um, commodities or products that are circulating in the world. It's obviously people as well, but um, commodities, products, objects, like they are privileged versus bodies, people of color are sort of not privileged. They're not privileged at all, actually. So um, yeah, just to bring about that conversation. And then in terms of the work itself, it was a move away from just video by itself, or you know also a move away from painting, because if in the other room there was a painting with the clothes, right? And so that was done like 10 years prior. And in a way, like putting these two works in the show made me realize, oh well, like these are things that I've been thinking about for so long but never really connected. Yes, so I would say that what connects those works is thinking about labor in particular. With the painting at that time, 10 years ago, I was really investigating what it means to sew, and to what's the word I'm looking for? Like putting myself in the shoes of a labor, a day labor. And in particular, I was thinking about my grandma who actually worked as a seamstress and who actually taught me how to sew. And so how do I bring that sort of language and that the visual language and that kind of production into my own artwork? And that's what I was thinking about at that time. And I was thinking of, in painting that could be a way, but then that happened to be the last one I made. And actually, that happened to be the last painting I ever made, because after that, I just moved on, and I continued working with clothes and fabric, but in different ways. And so it opened up another world for me. And as I continue to work with photography and video, I just went in that direction. But now, 10 years later, when fast forward, um, when I had the opportunity again to work, and have space available to expand beyond photo or video, that's when I it just made sense to bring in these other sculptural elements that had been in the back burner for several years, but I didn't have the opportunity to bring them, to connect them. And then for me, what that does is just it allows me to expand beyond just the 2D plane of a video, in the same way that the painting was restricting me. And so you have these, piles of clothes that are very like, um, how do I describe them? They're very present, right? And absent because there's no bodies filling them, right? But they're at the same time they're alluding to bodies, right? And then of course, like the labor, for me, again, the labor is very important. We see the wear and tear of the people who have worn these clothes, right? Oftentimes, or majority, coming from working class communities. And then you also see some of the clothes are inside out, so you can see the seams, you can see the tags and where in the world it was made or fabricated. So all of this labor becomes visible, and thinking about making that visible rather than maintaining it invisible as it normally is. I definitely agree with you that they are intersecting. I can't say that there was something I was initially thinking. I think that's something that over the course of producing the work, I realized, I came to realize, and it's something that is very meaningful to me, just in how powerful that is, right? Into realizing that your own experience, your own memory by itself, of course, there's power in that, but once it becomes a part of something larger, a greater collective, then it takes on a whole different meaning, and it's much more powerful that way. And it can connect with a wider audience, and I really enjoy that. How like moving that is, and how um, every person that comes and looks at it or experiences it will be having a very different experience from anybody else.